Hey guys, it's Bree. I finished The Abyss Beyond Dreams by Peter F. Hamilton this week, and I wanted to share with you guys my thoughts. I read The Abyss Beyond Dream on Kindle because I got an eARC off of Netgalley. It is a space opera that's kind of tangentially, I think, related to his other works. If you're a big Peter F. Hamilton fan and you know better, please tell me in the comments. This is the first Peter F. Hamilton book I've read. It follows a kind of complicated storyline. In this world, there is this thing called the Void, which is, I think, essentially supposed to be like a black hole. And inside of it, past the event horizon, is this kind of crazy, part of the universe that doesn't always necessarily adhere to normal space-time constraints. There are entire planetary systems and people living there, and sections of it don't necessarily have the same time structures as we have here kind of in the regular universe. The Commonwealth is the system of planets outside of the Void, and they know that the Void exists. They know that the Void is kind of vaguely hostile, and they know that some of their people have been sent kind of into the Void and been absorbed by the Void. Those people seem to still be alive and transmitting messages, but they're not really sure how that could be or what it means. So they send one of their top science guys into the Void in the hopes of him being able to either figure out what's going on or, in the absolute best case scenario, bring people out of it. It's really an interesting story with a lot of really complex detail. As much world building as I knew was happening, I can only imagine how it fits into the greater scheme of the Peter F. Hamilton kind of Void universe. So there's this guy named Nigel who is the super genius that they send into the Void, and his whole mission is to kind of recover the human population that's living there and bring them back to the Commonwealth. And when he gets into the Void and he goes to the planet where people are living called Bienvenidos, he realizes that it's going to be a lot more complicated than he thinks. The Void seems to be denigrating technology and causing its destruction, and it's just it seems kind of like a hopeless case. But he does kind of think very highly of himself, and he is supposed to be one of the smartest men in the universe. And so he's not going to give up easily. When he gets there and he's kind of established himself in the world, he starts to kind of play with the local politics and starts to try to use the local politics in his own way, in ways that will provide him with technological and kind of power advantages so that he can get what he needs to get done. The characters in this story are pretty interesting. Very few of them are one-dimensional, and even though the story doesn't necessarily always revolve around an individual character, they are almost always given kind of this fully fleshed story. There are only a couple who really don't get a backstory, or not a detailed backstory. There's a really interesting dynamic between a lot of them, and as they grow as characters, their relationships really change, especially with some of the characters who become more and more radical. The politics of the world is really kind of neat. A lot of the ways that they try to incite this kind of revolutionary tactic is very delicately done, and by that I don't mean to say that it's tiptoed around at all, because it's not. It's just done in a way that I think is very attentive to revolutionary politics in general in our world, and that tries to be very cautious of the political and economic structure that Hamilton has already built in the world. That being said, it's not always very clear what the power structures in the government are, or what the power structures are kind of outside of the government. It's very clear that there's kind of like an economic and political interaction, but it's not always clear whether there's a hierarchy in the system, and if so, what that really actually looks like. Technology doesn't work in the world, and I thought that that was a really interesting kind of thing to try out. So Nigel knows this as he approaches the void. And perhaps that leads to one of my biggest kind of problems with the story. In order to kind of get around the steel and iron machines don't really work or stay together right, they integrate technology with biosystems. That is used in a lot of ways as a get around, and there are times when it feels too convenient. But overall, I found it to be a really captivating story. The world building was really quite interesting, and the characters were really, you could see how they progressed, and it was a natural change from who they were at the start of the story to who they were at the end. It was very well done, and I quite enjoyed the way that Hamilton takes you through the world. It does have a multiple storylines, so you will follow one character and then jump to another and then jump to another. There were times when it kind of felt like one of the characters should have been picked back up, like it had been set too long. But those stories were largely tied together at the end. Overall, I would probably give this story a 4 or 3.5 out of 5. It was really good. There were just a couple of nitpicky things and a couple of like strange story choices that prevented me from giving it a bit of a higher rating. I was quite impressed. It was, like I said, my first Peter F. Hamilton, and I can understand why people have really invested their time into his stories. If you have read any Peter F. Hamilton, let me know what book you think I should pick up next. If you have picked up The Abyss Beyond Dreams, please let me know what you thought of it. I would love to talk to you some. So I will talk to you guys later. I hope you're having a fantastic week.